It seems that Nuno Espirito Santo is winning his battle over transfer business at West Ham United. With the suggestion that Nuno has been dragging his feet over the names of players that were put to him as potential transfer targets, it seems to becoming increasingly obvious that Nuno doesn't seem to fancy some of the names that were put forward and that he's insisting on signing the players that he wants. Step forward, Pablo Felipe Pereira de Jesus, or Pablo for short, from Portuguese club Gil Vicente, and Adama Traore from Fulham. Now, on Thursday, I was told by a very reliable source that both Pablo and Traore were done deals, and I reported this in a very short video that I did on Thursday afternoon. However, whilst we know that Pablo has undertaken a medical and that the signing could be announced any time today on Friday, Nuno may have to wait just a little bit longer to land Traore. The West London club are reluctant to allow Traore to leave just yet, whilst they have players representing their nations at the AFCON. But despite that, there are two things that are quite obvious at this moment in time. West Ham are doing their transfer business early, and Nuno is very much in control over the players that he wants to bring to the club. So whilst we've been linked with a whole array of players, probably most of which are likely to have been identified by Max Hahn, the head of technical recruitment and analysis, Nuno seems to have put his foot down and dismissed those players for the ones that he wants. Now, is that good or bad? Well, I guess good in one sense. Nuno knows what he wants. But shades of West Ham managers of past, where they dictate who they want rather than what fits the club for the now and the future, seems to be coming back to the fold. One could argue that Pablo, at the age of 22, it's his birthday today, actually, so happy birthday to you, Pablo. One could argue that at the age of 22, he's most certainly a player that's possibly for the here and now, as well as for the future. You can't say that, however, about Adama Traore, who turns 30 at the end of January. And he's hardly been a prolific player for any of the clubs, the English clubs, that he's played for. I'll get to his details and I'll get to Pablo's details in a moment. Now, I've got to confess, I'm a little bit concerned that we're heading back to the days of Moyes, Lopetegui, Potter, the manager picking the players and wants that he wants rather than what the club needs. Which is why the reason why Nuno's in the position that he's in at West Ham is because he's inherited a mishmash of a squad, that's been put together by Moyes, Potter, Lopetegui, and even Tim Steidten. So the whole idea of having Max Hahn at the club is to identify young talent which will not only deliver for the here and now, but for the future as well. Matthias Fernandes is a prime example of what Hahn can deliver. But I guess needs must. We're in a relegation scrap, and yet again, only looking for the here and now in order to get us out of the fix that we're in. So with the incoming of two strikers and other players heavily linked, at least the board are backing Nuno to get players in early. Now, in addition to Pablo and Traore, we're also reported to be very close to signing Tati Castellanos from Lazio. Now, as I've mentioned several times before, we were linked to this striker when he was still playing in the MLS for New York City. Instead of coming to West Ham, probably another striker that David Moyes was quite dismissive about, Castellanos went on loan to Girona, and it was his performance in the Spanish league that caught the eye of Lazio, who paid 15 million euros for the striker in 2023. So two strikers, one age 27, the other one who's just turned 22. This reminds me of a transfer window 29 years ago when we signed in February 1997, Harry Redknapp signed John Hartson and Paul Kitson. And their 13 goals and 3 assists got us saved from relegation in that 1996-97 season. Now, can Pablo and Tati do the same thing for West Ham United if they both do come to West Ham in the second half of this season? Well, I guess we're all hoping that that's going to be the case. So back to the video I put out on Thursday, where I repeated the info I was given. I got the Pablo transfer right, as well as the Luis Guilherme transfer, where the player will imminently be going to Sporting in Portugal. But I was a little ahead of myself, stating that Traore was a done deal. Now, I'm sure you're also aware that Traore made a late sub appearance in Fulham's game against Crystal Palace on New Year's Day. So that means one of two things for West Ham. Either we've got to wait for Traore and sign him later in the transfer window, around maybe the third week of the window, or we look elsewhere for a wide attacking alternative option. Now, despite Castellanos and Pablo being predominantly strikers, both have on occasion played out wide, primarily on the right side of attack, with Pablo being the more versatile of the two players. So if we are to wait to sign Traore later in the transfer window, there's a chance maybe that Pablo might be able to do a job there if needed until Traore's arrival. But are any of these players good enough for what we need? Let's start with Pablo first. At 22, he'll be one of the youngest strikers we have signed for the senior team in an awfully long time. We usually opt for the older, career-ending, injury-riddled strikers. So the signing of Pablo is a breath of fresh air. His development through the youth system at Portuguese club Famalicão and he's basically developed in Portugal. You know, first at Famalicão, and then he's completed several loan spells at other Portuguese clubs in his short career. Now, after a successful loan spell at Gil Vicente, they signed him for a mere £250,000 in July 2025, 6 months ago, or just over 6 months ago, which means that selling him to West Ham United for 21 million euros is an absolute steal for them. They have made a huge profit. It's 21 million euros plus another 3 million euros in add-ons. Sorry, I said he signed for Gil Vicente for 250,000 euros. So now they're selling him for 21 million to West Ham. What a profit. Now, this season, he's bagged 10 goals in 13 league appearances, but he has missed the last 6 games because of muscular injury, and he's only just returned from that injury. He missed 5 games last season too with an unspecified injury. So the medical on the player at West Ham is likely to have been a thorough one to ensure that he's fit and ready to be signed by the club. He is physically strong with a direct goal-orientated profile. He has the raw attributes to adapt to the Premier League, but is likely to need a bit of time. You know, he's likely to need tactical coaching and physical seasoning to thrive at West Ham United in the Premier League. He shows good acumen, good acceleration over short distances. He times his runs to exploit channels behind defenders, and he can also act as a focal point for counterattacks, the ideal scenario for Nuno's system, the Nuno system that he wants to play at West Ham. And it's not quite working out, the counterattack, because we've got no pace up front and we've got no outlet because Wilson, well, when Wilson has played, we have had an outlet, but when Wilson's not available or not picked, then that outlet is missing. His scouting profiles highlight his blend of physical dominance and finishing instincts rather than being an intricate playmaker. But maybe that's what Nuno doesn't want, an intricate playmaker. We've got enough of those in the squad, like, the other Brazilian that we've got in the club. So he wants someone direct. And I guess in that respect, Pablo fits the bill. However, he does have weaknesses. He's got limited top-level experience. He's still young, with relatively few senior minutes. He is far from being a refined playmaker, as I've said, and he's still a lot to learn technically to develop his link-up play. If the service is poor to him, he can be left quite isolated. And he needs to improve on his decision making when under pressure. He needs to improve his first touch and his composure when pressed by more elite defenders. Can he succeed at West Ham under Nuno? I guess the short answer is potentially yes. And I guess we're hoping it is definitely a yes, but maybe not immediately. That's the problem. Hence why we might be looking to get two strikers in this transfer window. Nuno's team values structured defensive shape, quick transitions, disciplined pressing, and traits that suit a forward who makes direct runs can finish chances. Pablo's physical profile and directness align with that, align with how Nuno wants West Ham to play. So it's possible that he will be a success, but I just don't know if it's going to be immediate or not. So what about Valentin Castellanos, or Tati, as he is now known? Well, Castellanos joined Lazio for a fee of 15 million euros in 2023. In his first season at the club, it wasn't exactly prolific, with just 6 goals in 46 appearances in all competitions. The 24-25 season was a lot better, with 14 goals and 8 assists in 40 appearances. And now 11 of those appearances and 4 of those goals were in the Europa League. However, this season is proving yet again another tough one for the striker. It's been a bit barren, 2 goals in 12 appearances. And he has also missed 6 games with a hamstring muscle injury as well. His injury record also includes 3 separate cases of abductor injuries, which have seen him miss a further 8 games last season, plus another 3 the season before that. Castellanos is a penalty box finisher, an intelligent runner. He excels at timing his runs behind defensive lines. He occupies half spaces, arriving late into the box to finish crosses or cutbacks. His finishing is clinical. He has excellent movement. His pressing and work rate is really, really good. However, he's not a natural target man, and isn't the best in physical and aerial duels. It's almost a prerequisite, aerial and physical duels in the Premier League. But with good wingers and a number 10 supplying the ball to him, Tati can be prolific. Ironically, I'm not 100% sold on Castellanos. If he can't be prolific in a slower paced league like Italy's Serie A, I don't know if he's going to be successful in the Premier League. Am I being harsh? I don't know. And then, of course, we have Traore, another player that I'm not altogether enthusiastic about. Traore is in his final 6 months at Fulham. He turns 30, as I've said, at the end of January, and his end product, many have said, is virtually non-existent. He was a Barcelona player. He made 21 appearances for Barcelona, but he scored just the one time. In 2015, he moved to Aston Villa and scored 1 goal in 12 games. They then sold him a year later to Middlesbrough, where in 71 games, he scored 5 goals, but he did assist in 13. 2 years later, they sold him to Wolves, where in 194 appearances, he scored 14 goals with 20 assists. You tell me if you think that's a really good record or not. Now, strangely, during his time, but I should have mentioned, by the way, Middlesbrough, Aston Villa, I believe, were all when they were playing in the Championship. Strangely, during his time, when he was loaned back to Barcelona, it was an odd one that Barcelona took him on. They took him on for a short period of time. But then, soon after his return, he became a free agent and he joined Fulham in 2023. Now, he's made 75 appearances so far for the West London club, 4 goals, 13 assists. I guess the assist rate is not bad. I don't know. Like I said, maybe I'm being too harsh on the player, but it feels as if this one's got failure written all over it if we pursue his signing. Fulham have said to have wanted £7 million, which is ridiculous given he's only got 6 months left. But I think 2 to 3 million is going to do it. And maybe it is worth a gamble. But on a 3-year deal, shades of Antonio start coming to my mind. And just for the record, as I mentioned in Thursday's brief video, Luis Guilherme, as I said at the start of the show, is off to Sporting of Lisbon for a fee of around 18 million pounds, 20 million euros. But West Ham have also insisted on a sell-on clause. So therefore, if he does become a big star in Portugal and he goes on to sign for a bigger club, then at least West Ham will get some kind of return on any profit that Sporting make. Other transfer news, well, I'm sure you've all heard it. Yet again, we're linked to Raheem Sterling. Now, the only way he's coming from Chelsea to West Ham is if Chelsea subsidise at least 2/3 of his 325 grand a week salary. But apparently, the player doesn't fancy West Ham. He would prefer to possibly go to Fulham. And ironically, going to Fulham would mean replacing Traore, who would come to West Ham. I guess with Enzo Maresca, that's a surprise, isn't it? 5th place, and they've sacked him. But I guess with Enzo Maresca leaving Chelsea, it'd be interesting to see if there are any other players that West Ham might fancy trying to bring to the club. That's it. That's the roundup for our the latest transfer news for the morning. I'm sure there's going to be plenty of other transfer news that I might bring you up to date on later on Friday. But thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. If you're new to this channel, please do become a subscriber of the channel. All you got to do, there's this QR code that's appeared in the top left-hand, or you're in the corner of what you're watching. So please click on that. You can become a subscriber of the channel free of charge. If you enjoy the show, please hit the like button below the video, as well as the hype button as well. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And I will see you all again pretty soon.